Let's just start. How has leadership shifted in the age of AI? What does that change look like for those of us who aren't necessarily leaders?
I mean, I think the shift is well underway, right? And it's been going on for a long time. So, I mean, I've been working with senior leaders on sustainability questions for 15 odd years now. And in that time, I think what we've all seen is what it takes to be a leader has changed significantly. The different kinds of pressures that leaders now have to deal with, the different kinds of decisions that they have to make, the kind of stakeholders that they have to engage with that they didn't even know were stakeholders 5 years ago, the number of societal issues that have become urgent, critical business issues, it's just completely different.
And is AI one of those? Does AI make the job of a leader harder?
AI comes in on top of all of that, and is kind of massively disrupting everything. But in some ways, AI's could be potentially a bit of a secret weapon here too. And actually, I think the real question when it comes to leadership and business is how long is it going to be before we actually get our first AI CEO, right? Which makes you wonder, well, what is it that is important about being a human in leadership?
Maddy, before we ask you the same question, do we actually want an AI CEO? Is that something we should be looking forward to, or is that something we should be saying, actually, that sounds like the worst possible option?
I think these kind of points get potentially a bit gimmicky, everybody's talking about that question, and of course it's a relevant one. I think in some ways leadership has shifted in utterly terrifying ways in all sorts of places, certainly from a geopolitical perspective. So I don't know that I necessarily want AI CEOs. What I do want is more moral-focused leadership. I think there's a real question for the combination of leadership and AI and the decision-making that AI can enable. Some of the decisions that have been making at the moment are utterly insane and would be so much more sensible if you had an AI view on, no, don't do that, for the sake of commercial outcomes, environmental outcomes, societal outcomes now and in the future. The AI would probably say in many areas, don't cut down 3 times
Give
the
us an
size of
example.
California. So 3 times the size of California, cutting down all of the trees, that's a leadership decision, which is utterly moronic for commercial, economic and societal reasons. You'd hope that human notion would be rebutted by the AI and that therefore that kind of decision could be stopped.
Mansoor, if you were to ask if I were to ask you what has changed in the way a leader has to think in a world that has AI, what would you say the major shifts are?
Yeah, so thank you. So AI as a disruptor, magnifier, amplifier, or whatever we call it, I mean, what we see is that it is far beyond the technological change that we are talking about, right? So, for example, first time calculator came in, wow, it was fantastic. Then, microwave, it can warm the food, crazy. And then, industrial revolution that we saw different phases. But what we are seeing that AI is far more than just a technological change, number one. Number two, with that thing in the picture, in terms of leadership, what the research that I'm looking at is that there are a lot of specialist roles, as we see, are being taken up by AI. For example, the last meeting that I had with one of the law firms, so they said that their speed has gone up by 2.5x. The reason being that a lot of contractual paperwork in terms of reading and drafting can now be done with AI. So if AI can take specialist roles, there is a new demand that is growing up, and that is the one that I talk about in my book, The Generalist Advantage, which says that there is the rise of generalists as compared to specialists that is coming up in the workplace.
So it sounds like you don't think we're going to have a CEO that is AI, an AI CEO. What you think is that CEOs need to make decisions around the fact that specialists are going to become replaceable by AI. Is that correct?
To an extent. But I have a case study on this. We recently did a case study on this. So there was a simulation. So on that simulation, so human CEO, so 3 CEOs, they took some decisions on that. And then we looked at the productivity in terms of sales revenue and the employee productivity at workplace. And then we compared that with the AI bot making decisions. So the productivity went up by 2.5% again, right? And then 2.5 times again instead of 2.5%. And then what we did was the third situation was where we augmented a human CEO with the AI, like the model, the work that we talk about, Copilot. So the augmentation model, so the productivity went up, the employee productivity and sales revenue in general, it went up by 7 times. So I think the key here is not that human CEOs or AI CEOs, it's the augmentation that we are talking about.
So Jon, how do you strike the balance? What do you want from your human CEO versus your AI CEO in this nice amalgamation?
I actually see it slightly differently. I think the augmented leadership, I think, is a very interesting paradigm for today. But if you think about what human intelligence actually is, how it actually works, right? I mean, the evolution of very specialized systems in our brain that evolved in order to now allow us to kind of catch stuff and throw stuff and spot danger and spot friendly faces and more advanced tasks like natural language processing and pattern recognition. So it's the interaction, the interoperability of all those specialist systems that give us our human general intelligence, right? Now, like neuroscientists, psychologists, AI researchers, they all have that same view. What does that mean for a company? What you could start to think of, what we could start to imagine, is that a company becomes a self-organizing system of interacting specialist operations, right? In a way, what that means is that the company itself becomes intelligent, right? We're talking about almost like a sort of corporate mind, which in some senses is a fairly terrifying idea, which places the premium on oversight, board management, questions around how do we make the alignment problem, as they call it in AI, how do we make sure that what this system is doing is aligned with the outcomes we'd like to see in the world, in terms of purpose, questions in terms of governance, and where does power reside. I think it's going to be we're going to need a revolution in board management for what's coming, I think.
So, I guess to shift this on its head a bit, Maddy, are we asking the right question when we talk about sustainable leadership in the age of AI? Or actually, should we be talking about what does sustainable leadership look like in this complex world where all these issues are, and how can AI facilitate sustainable leadership? Are we asking the wrong question, making it about AI?
Yeah, I think so, because I'd rather that we look at what is the leadership that we need in order to have a viable future on any level, commercially, societally, environmentally. How do we need to make the right decisions in order to enable that long-term well-being? How can then AI supercharge that? At the moment, big business has this massive role to play. It's why we're all here. It's why this conference is so amazing. But big business is very, very slow. So how can AI enable that radically faster decision-making, bringing together all of these different divisions? Everybody's siloed. Sustainability, marketing, legal, compliance, supply chain is so siloed. If you can create that kind of intelligence and the connections supercharged, it will speed us up in a way that we just desperately need. We can't go so slowly.
Where have you seen successes in that speeding up and supercharging? Do you have examples of where either your organization has been able to capitalize on that, or where you've seen other organizations capitalize on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a whole theme within sustainability that's about transformational relationships, and we really need to look at that, because it's great that the majority of the audience here is for sustainability. It's putting the spotlight of it, of course, but that has to be systemic through the whole organisation. So Flourish has developed a platform whereby we're able to bring together sustainability, marketing, legal, compliance, so you can sustainability teams can turn their work into brand value, marketers can turn their work into campaigns without greenwashing, and the legal teams can actually enable campaigns to go to market. If you haven't got AI to make that work, it's an absolutely monumental nightmare, because the greenwashing laws are so huge. They're like a 10-story building high. They can't, in an earthquake with no page numbers, as one client referred to it. So AI can cope with that information and bring all of those different team members together.
Mansoor, where do you think AI is not being effectively used in leadership right now? What would you like to see change in how there is an approach to capitalizing on this technology?
Yeah, so I think, AI is here to not replace us, but inform us, right? And as we all understand, AI is the tool, not the decision maker when we talk about leadership and strategy and innovation in organizations, right? And certainly we talk about the terms like hallucinations and, excuse my language, botshit, the term as it's now legally defined as well, where AI hallucinates and comes up with bias and, the prompts and the answers which are not accurate or not addressing to the question. So the point is that in that particular perspective, if I look at the question and just going back one step, when you asked, that are we asking the right question, that, how does leadership look like in the age of AI? The research that I've done, and the one that I've pictured here, is that in the near future, and I'm talking about near future rather than future because the pace of AI is so fast that if I talk about 10, 15 years plan, it will fall on myself and like hitting the nail on its head. But what I see through research is that the rise of individual contributors in the workplace is going fast as compared to team leaders. Because if AI can take specialist roles, so an individual contributor who manages 3 out of 7 tasks at work, individually, projects or tasks. So the rise of that will increase because when a human or manager or leader, when they work with AI, so individual contributors increase as compared to the team leader increase. That is the shift that I see in terms of leadership in the age of AI. And I think it's to a great extent sustainable moving forward.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit. So I think, and looking at the US, looking at the rise of what we might call the kind of super wealthy, big business oligarchs, for lack of a better word, a lot of them come out of the kind of tech and innovation industry. Do we run the risk in this world of AI that actually the people who come to the top, the people who become leaders, not only of companies, but also of countries, of general decision making, are the big tech bros, and we lose all kind of facet of sustainability, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, of a human first approach?
100%. I mean, this is a huge, huge risk. It's actually a worse risk, I think, than you're describing, because it's not at all clear that the big tech bros understand what they've got either. So how are they managing to figure out what is happening in the
Elaborate on that more. What do you mean they don't understand what they've got?
Just the way that AI works, and once the systems start locking into each other, the control that we'll have, the visibility we'll have into what's going on, and the control that we'll have into the decisions that AI is taking on things like power grids and transport systems and healthcare networks, and we need to go at a speed which makes sure that there is a level of human oversight, and that's really the scary question. There is absolutely a kind of a centralization of power threat when it comes to the economic interests of the billionaires running the tech companies, but actually there's an even bigger threat behind that, which is how AI itself is working.
So, Maddy, how do we combat that? How do we protect those of us sitting in this room who can use AI as an effective tool and can use it to supercharge the way we work with our friends Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg over there?
Well, yeah, to our chat earlier, and Jon, everything you shared here, I think the thing that it feels like some kind of horrific horror film, the idea of the tech bros being supercharged. We do not need them en masse and at scale. In order to create a sustainable world, our most important thing is to deliver on the UN SDGs. It's the world's to-do list. And I truly believe that for that, we need more feminine leadership. There's endless evidence of that. We need democratic and mindful, that kind of conscious leadership. We need a huge amount more of that in business and in government. And that is radically different to the tech bros. and the tech bros on tech steroids. We don't. Yeah, please not that. Please not that.
It really is a horrifying vision, the
Yeah,
tech bros
yeah.
on tech
I mean,
steroids.
he says we want a more macho business culture.
Exactly. Yes, but there is a lot of evidence to show, and also, their share price proves that beautifully.
Mansoor, what would you like, what would your vision of the perfect sustainable AI leadership function, what would it look like?
Yeah, but far from
To,
perfect.
to move
yeah.
away from the
Yeah,
supercharged
yeah.
tech bros.
So I think, we have all been listening to the term, job replacement, right? And then there's another term called job displacement, which says that AI will not only, take some jobs, but it will create more jobs. But then not just job replacement, not just job displacement, but I think the more appropriate word is job reinvention. So as managers and leaders in organizations, there's an acute demand of changing the way we work, where we work, and how we work. And I see that leaders are struggling in organizations, especially in multinationals, through my research, that where to go. There's a lot of AI anxiety. There's a lot of hand-holding needed. There's a lot of upskilling, reskilling, that sort of thing needed. So to answer your question in part, that how can we make it safe in terms of leadership? So what I see through my research is that generalist leaders, those who have broad and integrative mindset as compared to specialist mindset, will have a better position in the near future.
Any questions from the audience? All right, we have one in the front here. Maxine, do we have a microphone? Thank you. The lady in the gray jumper in the front.
Thank you everyone for your thoughts. I have a question, given that we're talking about leadership, but also what do we think about our leaders of the future, given that teenagers, for example, nowadays, they're very digitally savvy, using technology in all sorts of scenarios, they don't go outside, etc. And we have seen probably not so long ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, that all the statistics showing that young people are leaving school without having the right problem solving, critical thinking skills and so on. And it seems that perhaps tools like generative AI is only going to make that problem worse. So what would that look like for our leaders of the future, where we are taking away that capacity to which was already a problem and perhaps making it worse in terms of preparation for the future?
One way of viewing that is an awful lot of leaders, certainly within this country, went to the most expensive school in the country and they're dreadful at making decisions. So it's not always the other human answer.
Yeah, answering your question in addition to this, recently, it's about to be published. I think it's next month. The book, when it's coming out, the Generalist Advantage. In that, I'm proposing a near future readiness index, which is based on 8 indicators of the future, especially in the age of AI. And 4 of them, as I can recall, are in terms of what you're saying. So one is that there will be a need of contextual intelligence. Right? So how do we make connections? How do we draw dots based on different disciplines and different domains that I'm part of? So if I'm too specialist, too siloed, then I may not have very good contextual intelligence. In addition to that, there will be a need of cognitive flexibility. So do I have agility and flexibility to move and change based on how things are changing? And then there's critical thinking, as you said rightly, and then big picture thinking as number 4, and then there are 4 other elements. So in short, the answer is that the delta is huge, the change is huge, and I think Gen Z and the different generations that we are seeing at the workplace, they are doing far better and helping us, in terms of improving and winning this AI game.
John?
I have a thought which there's a kind of paradox here, I think, which is that the more pervasive tech becomes in our lives, the more pervasive AI becomes, I think the more of a premium we're going to see on human factors in the world. I really do. I think, especially interpersonal factors like trust and inspiration and humor and teams and team spirit. And I think there's a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of questions that are going to start emerging actually about what does it mean to be a human. And I think that's really positive.
Strong.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for our panelists. We're over time.